Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Founded in 2017 by former Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer, USA Facts is a not-for-profit, nonpartisan civic initiative making government data easy for all Americans to access and understand. The organization provides accessible analysis on U.S. spending and outcomes in order to ground public debates in facts. Today, USA Facts President Poppy MacDonald joins us again to discuss something we all care about, the State of the Union in numbers. Poppy, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thanks for having me back, Jill. I so appreciate it.
You got it. And Poppy, I know that the USA Facts State of the Union in numbers, which is now available on your website at usafact.org, it's a big undertaking each year. Before you dive into what this year's report uncovers, can you give us a bit of more background on what it is and why USA Facts produces it?
Absolutely. So our goal is to ground public debates and decision-making in facts, and we think there's no better time than around the President's annual State of the Union address to Congress. We're looking forward to President Biden delivering that soon. We looked at the past 4 decades, and no matter what party was holding the presidency, presidents generally describe the State of the Union as strong, stronger, never been better. And we thought it's a bit more of a complex picture. And so what we took a stab at doing was understanding by the numbers, how is the U.S. doing, looking over time at issues like education, healthcare, economy, the environment, how people are living. And we try to make that available so that Americans can understand by the numbers, are we headed in the right or wrong direction? And depending on the topic you care about, you can dive in as deeply as you want. That's at usafacts.org.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you time it around this year specifically. Can you go a bit deeper into that?
I'd love to, and I'd really recommend Americans go directly to our site and dig in, but let me give you a highlight. As you can imagine, this year's State of the Union was unique because we had to address COVID, not only the impact it had on people's health, but there was really no part of the U.S. that it didn't touch, from air travel to the economy, certainly its impact on jobs and how people are living. As you probably know, we start by looking at COVID and the impact it had. It touched 8% of Americans were diagnosed as positive from COVID. So that's about 27 million people, and 500,000 people died. And we look at COVID deaths in comparison to history. It's the highest death rate we've had in the U.S. since 1943, since the Spanish flu. So certainly start there with the impact of COVID. And then we also look at things like education. We have families reporting that their children spent less time being educated. That's obviously an impact of going virtual. And then no doubt looking at the economy. So we looked at things like job loss. We had 9.4 million jobs were lost in America. And yet you have things like the stock market, which obviously your viewers are really familiar with, which reached a record high. So a real mixed bag, but we try to show people what does the State of the Union look like, especially given the impact of COVID.
And what does this mean for the average family in the United States?
Yeah, so for the average family, obviously, you think about something like 8% of people diagnosed with COVID, but the impact went far beyond that. So 50% of families experienced a loss of employment income. So that had a huge impact. You also think about something like 38% of households said they struggled to pay for the usual things that they need to cover with their monthly income. And then 9.5% of family said they were experiencing household insecurity, so didn't have a place to stay. Counterintuitively, we also saw household income go up in 2020, and that was the result of some of the government relief and CARES Act funding.
Who lost income?
Yeah, so that is interesting. When you think about those 9.4 million jobs lost, it wasn't equal across the sector of employment. So we looked at median income, below median income, 8% of total jobs there were lost. Above median income, it was 3%. So definitely harder hit on people making below median income. Jobs like hairdressers, people who are in that sort of personal care economy, as well as food services, are where we saw big losses. Some of the gains were in home health aides, so people who also fall below that median, but were there to serve people as elderly people were had to be in their homes and certainly were impacted by this pandemic.
And how does this affect wealth overall?
Yeah, so wealth overall, it's interesting. We saw for the middle 20%, so we just say the middle class is the middle 20% of Americans, their wealth increased since 1990. So their wealth increased by 66%. But when you look at total wealth, who owns all the wealth in America, that middle 20%, it decreased in terms of what they own of that pie from 12% to 7%. So it's really a mixed bag. They're getting gains but losing total share.
And how else is America changing?
Oh, in so many ways, right? Too many to count, but our population is growing. We're 329 million Americans. 38% of our growth came from immigrants, so we're more of an immigrant community. Something like environment, we saw 2020 was the second warmest year on record, yet we also saw our renewable energy became surpassed coal in terms of our use of that and reliance on it in 2019 for the first time in 130 years. So, I mean, so many ways we're changing as a country, and at usafacts.org and our State of the Union, Americans can dig in on all of the areas.
And Poppy, that's just a staggering amount of data and facts, and it certainly does paint a very interesting portrait of our nation right now. What should people make of the data at the end of the day?
That's a great question. And at USA Facts, our goal is to provide the data, but take no position. And so what we hope is that Americans will come to usafacts.org, access the data, form their own opinions, and advocate for the direction they think is right for America.
All right, Poppy, appreciate the insight. As always, thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.